Hello, how's it going? Today we'll be taking a look at this developer who thinks that Vampire Survivors is just the worst game in the world because his didn't do better on Steam charts. And I'll get into more detail of that, but for now, we'll take a look at his amazing points that totally apply and work perfectly with this, and it doesn't just show jealousy of success that he didn't achieve in the same way. No jealousy or malice there from what it shows, so let's just see. Let's see. Alright.
Back in January of 2021, I released a game called Endless Overdrive. It was a small project I developed over the course of about 2 months, an arcade title where you move across a grid playing field, shooting blocks and building combos. Very simple premise, but there are 2 catches here. The first of which is that moving and shooting are both automated. You can decide where you move, but not when, and you can only ever fire in the same direction that you're moving. Secondly, every time a block is shot, it gets frozen in place, restricting the amount of space you're able to maneuver through. This is why the combo system exists. Maintaining long enough combos changes the properties of your bullets, allowing you to clear the screen of any frozen blocks. If you ask me, making single-screen arcade games like this is basically the best starting point you can have as a game designer, because anybody can make this kind of game, but making one that actually holds people's attention is one hell of a challenge. When your mechanical scope is so minuscule, you seriously have to think through every design decision you make, maximizing the amount of overlap between each mechanic in order to squeeze out as much depth and nuanced interactions as you possibly can. Hopefully the end result will be like an elaborate Jenga tower, every block laid with such deliberation that to remove a single one would send the whole thing crashing down. Developing games like this, you really can't take anything for granted. For instance, in games that have combo systems in them, dropping a combo is almost always treated like a mistake, plain and simple. But when I was working on Endless Overdrive, putting in such a binary system as that completely destroyed the balance of the game. There needed to be some kind of benefit to dropping combos, or else the game wouldn't work. So I introduced a second enemy type which traces the player's footsteps and gradually speeds up as the game progresses. And the only way to get it to slow back down is to drop a combo. When you mesh mechanics together like this, ensuring that each one has its own set of pros and cons, what you get is a system where you need to think ahead of yourself, plan for the future, because every action you take will have a ripple effect on every other action. That's depth, that's decision making, the beating heart of gameplay. A system that lacks ambiguity, where every choice can be boiled down to clear right or wrong, can hardly be considered a game at all. This is why I find the explosive success of Vampire Survivors so concerning. The first time I played it, I was really struck by how much it reminded me of Endless Overdrive. Both games have automated attacks and swarms of enemies that come at you from all sides of the screen with simplistic movement. But these surface-level similarities only highlighted for me that the design philosophies underlying the games could not be more opposed. I have never in my life played something so hostile to the concept of depth and decision-making as Vampire Survivors. If you were a designer that actually cared about nuanced, multifaceted game mechanics, you would not make a single choice that this game makes. The most obvious way to show this would be the enemy design, the thing that even people who like the game complain about. Every enemy here does the same thing. They walk towards you. Some do this a little bit faster, some do it while having slightly more health, but that's it. Did you expect that skeletons carrying different weapons would attack you in different ways, or attack you at all? Nope, they just apathetically limp at you, same as all the rest. With only a few incredibly infrequent exceptions, that is the most you're getting out of this enemy roster. Since there's no meaningful differentiation between enemy types, there's also no reason to ever prioritize killing certain enemies over others, and considering that the majority of the levels are endless fields devoid of level hazards or geometry, there's no positional aspect to combat either. Walking away from an enemy before it can touch you is the full extent of the combat depth you can expect from Vampire Survivors. This strategy does not change or evolve in any way across a playthrough. Top to bottom, it's as bare bones in one note as a combat system can feasibly be. The real draw to the game then is its progression system. Killing enemies awards you with EXP gems, granting you new weapons and abilities with each level up. Hypothetically, this adds some actual meat to the game, allowing you to come up with highly personalized builds for your character.
Dude, I like how he compares his own game, acting like his insanely better when I play. Hell, I'm showing gameplay footage right now, which I'm gonna stop at this and just show Call of Duty World War gameplay, because that's a much better game in comparison to this shithole of a fucking. All you can do is just shoot blocks, and after a while of shooting at blocks, then you once you get to a 5x score with multiplier, you can use this. It switches to a type of gun that destroys the blocks, so you can clear the screen. But after a while, it will not work. The multiplayer goes down, and if it doesn't, you keep it going, you end up getting killed by the red blocks quicker, or they track you faster, whatever. And there's also like other blocks that appear on the screen that are these red blocks, these red spaces. If you bump into those, you die as well, or if one appears right on you, which that part's just random, with luck pretty much, which kind of is hypocritical in a sense. Even though I haven't played Vampire Survivor, from what I've seen and what I've heard from other people, and watching gameplay of it, I've noticed that no, a lot of what he's saying isn't even true about the game itself. There's some of it that would be valid points if it was actually critiquing it and not just saying it's not a video game because buying it was less successful. That's all this is, and that's what his next video is, where he pulls a transphobia card on the developer. Because you're transphobic if you disagree with me, even though even got asmongold to pull his video from it, which because it got 1,000 views before he pulled it, before he noticed that, oh, someone wants me to pull it, I'm gonna pull the video. That means he lied, obviously, because, you know, actually pulling the video later on means that he could have not noticed, or he could have been doing something else. And I don't know, that just pissed me off that he did some shit like that. And also with his game, it's not better, it's worse, honestly. I felt more bored playing it, and the music that's in it just kind of makes me feel annoyed because, like, it doesn't really match too well. It seems like for something more like Doom, not a fucking point-and-shoot game. Maybe if it was at an arcade, but not something online. It's a good start for a developer. And Vampire Survivor is a much better start for someone who's trying to, you know, leave. I don't know if he's leaving gambling behind with like how he worked at a arcade, and yeah, he's gonna make it just as addictive as gambling to some degree, because that's all what video games are, but they're not as addictive as gambling. I still could get myself to stop playing Vampire Survivor even if I started playing it, because I'm not that addicted to video games. I mean, also, isn't that the same structure as your game? When you claim that it's a constructive thing, if people are addicted to your game, as I've seen the comments on your website, because you couldn't post the game on fucking Steam, and there's an overwhelming amount of positive views on Vampire Survivor, which I think is just kind of funny. Like, the one dude who's salty about this is a dude who developed a similar game that did worse, and he got mad about it, and he resulted in saying, oh, it's transphobia, everybody's being transphobic to me, everybody's so mean, they're just mean to me, everybody's just hating on me, they're just haters, they're not criticizing me because I'm fucking stupid and don't know a fucking thing about gaming or game development to some level. Or they're just trying to make drama clicks. That's why I believe it's something along those lines. Somewhere between it. I mean, if they want to make an over-hyperbolic assumption, I can make the exact same over-hyperbolic assumption. I should not have smoked 5 cigarettes earlier. Anyways, here's his other clip that I sped up as well, so you don't have to listen to his bullshit, and I'll talk more about those points and, whatever. Also, no, the game is not just a point-and-click game, and there's multiple abilities, maps, and things like that that you unlock throughout the game, which if you look at his other video, his own points are getting discredited by his own gameplay, which I'm not going to play that one because that's a waste of fucking time. Here's the rest of it, of the cringe.
In practice, it's essentially meaningless, as the upgrades you're allowed to choose from are randomized every time you level up, and each weapon is already poorly differentiated to begin with. Since they're all passive and almost never have unique attack properties, you're only choosing weapons based on their range and damage output. To the game's credit, there is a small sliver of strategizing here, as it's important to choose weapons that cover different ranges, but that's hardly enough of a choice to build an entire combat system around. The problem is that the fundamental actions of movement and attacking lack any real depth. As a result, despite the fact that you can build characters with wildly varying loadouts, those choices have no effect on your playstyle. Regardless of whether you're controlling a damage tank or a glass cannon, a slow-moving death machine or a quick-footed wimp, the way you view and approach combat encounters is identical. If you see an enemy, walk into them until they die, but if they're going to walk into you first, run away. This is not combat design, this is nothing. It's also probably not a surprise to any of you. Even looking through positive reviews of the game, basically everyone concedes that the mechanics are completely vapid. The real secret to its addictive gameplay is the power trip of it all, getting to watch numbers go up, an increasing swarm of enemies being obliterated by a barrage of bullets growing in equal measure. It's reasonably satisfying, and there's nothing wrong with the game making you feel good for playing well. My problem though is that playing well has virtually nothing to do with your knowledge of the game's systems or decision-making ability, and everything to do with the amount of time you've sunk into the game. As I've discussed, combat being as shallow as it is means that there's no skills you could feasibly improve at as a player. The way you play the game 20 hours in is exactly the same way you were playing 10 minutes in. The only avenue for improvement is spending hours grinding money so you can buy permanent stat upgrades and extra characters. This is why I consider the game to be predatory and honestly morally reprehensible. As a game designer, you have a responsibility to not waste people's fucking time, to build games which actually engage players mentally, testing their ability to adapt to new situations and solve problems. A game that ropes you into devoting hours of your life to it in return for nothing but completely unearned hits of dopamine is malicious. malicious and evil. Even if you're of the belief that this game isn't technically predatory because it lacks microtransactions, you at the very least have to admit that this style of game design is wide open to exploitation. It's only a matter of time before some AAA company copies Vampire Survivors verbatim, only with even more addictive gameplay slathered in microtransactions. Game design is the art of decision-making, presenting players with a complex evolving knot to untangle, problems which force you to think beyond the present moment and consider what consequences might happen in the future. But Vampire Survivors has it completely backwards. This is a game only concerned with the past, an entire system whose sole purpose is to highlight the mild satisfaction of realizing that your stats are bigger than they were 5 minutes ago, that you're killing more enemies than you were 5 minutes ago. There is nothing beyond that. There is no future in Vampire Survivors. The fact that the project has already been successful enough to have spawned imitators makes me feel embarrassed to believe in video games. This is artistically worthless dreck that displays a stunning lack of imagination and curiosity for game design as an art form. You might think I'm jumping the gun, being mean to a game that's still in early access. However, I sincerely believe that the only way this game could be meaningfully improved would be to completely rework the mechanics from a fundamental level, and that is not going to happen. Vampire Survivors will never have more depth, because these mechanics were not built to be deep in the first place. It cannot become more interesting, it can only become more. More weapons, more items, more stages, more enemies, none of which address the fact that the core of this game is a vacuous nothing where the concepts of decision-making and thoughtful play go to die. And so what we're left with is an ever-expanding turd, continuously polished to the delight of a captive audience. And if that's the future of video games, I don't want to be a part of it.
I like how he still continues to act like his game is significantly more superior. I don't know, there's not many more points I can actually make, but I can still mention the fact that with the asmongold thing, even asmongold reacted to it, mentioned, yeah, he did take down the video as soon as he saw it. Which is like, okay, so he was doing something else time. But besides that, his own video where he talks about that being, and other people being homophobic because they disagree with him, it's just funny to me, and how, if I search up his game on Steam, guess what I get? Nothing. Because it's not there. And if I go to his website, even now, a lot of the positive things out there seem to be mostly just either friends of his or family members, and also, I'm not saying to go and harass him or anything like that, I'm just saying that, you know, you're not getting the exact same thing as what he's getting on Steam, you know, with the Vampire Survivors, developer Vampire Survivors game on Steam. I will put links in the description, and including a few of my friends' videos that I thought were really interesting on the subject. And, just, well, also, apparently he was calling Klutzy King a homophobe as well. And, because he criticized him on his take. I haven't actually watched Klutzy King's video yet, but I'm planning to after I finish up on this video, and I will also link his video in the description too. And just, I don't know, it's hilarious that this guy actually thinks that Vampire Survivors is the worst game in the world, which I don't know if it could be that he's trolling, except for the fact that he responded in a hyperbolic way. I think it's fucked up to make people take down their video to begin with just because it criticized you. Like, that's the same thing Quantum does, and I don't know, you just don't fuck with things like that, or, you know, forcing other people to do things that obviously it would be their own personal choice to do. But well, that's about it, guys. I think I'll end this video. This video seems to have been a bit shorter. There wasn't many points I need to make or wanted to make. So the fact that, yeah, there's leveling, there's gold in the game, and you can unlock different maps from it. There's also different classes you can create and stuff, and he does, like, briefly mention in his video, yeah, you can create a class, but obviously it's just a point-and-click game, you know, obviously it's not gonna do very well in his own words, but in all reality it's, like, more like if, with Garaaoftherage or something, that's more what Vampire Survivors seems to be like, but in a different light from what I'm just comparing what I've played before, because I haven't played Vampire Survivors, so I can't make much of a comparison off of that. But from what it looks like, those two are quite comparable, with like Garaaoftherage and, you know, Vampire Survivor, and for that reason I'm excited to play Vampire Survivor. I'm really interested in this game now. And yeah, I'll end the video about here, and just to mention beforehand, I am still going to work on that sodium chloride video, that meme. I'm just going to take a break for a little bit, just to clear my head. And also so I don't bash my head on the wall. And so I can deal with some real life issues. I just wanted to make this video real quick. And see you guys some other time. Whatever.